All right, last little topic we'll get to before we get to Ryan McGee and my college football picks. We're going to stay in college basketball. We're going to stay in the state of Kentucky because friend of the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast, Chris Mack, out of nowhere, just made some headlines on Wednesday afternoon. And if you remember, I had Chris Mack on about a year ago. Wouldn't claim I know him well or very much at all. He was a great guest, though, very gracious with his time. It was a fun interview. On Wednesday, he did an interview with John Fanta, who works for Fox. Full disclosure, I've never met John Fanta, don't know anything about him, don't know who he is, even though I work for Fox, don't know him. But he's obviously getting good guests for his podcast, good for him. And on the podcast, John Fanta asked Chris Mack about the Kentucky-Louisville game. And for people who are not, following it minute by minute, as of right now, that game has not officially been rescheduled yet. And so John Fanta asked Chris Mack about it, and what Chris Mack basically said, and I'm paraphrasing, you can go find the clip on Twitter, but essentially Chris Mack mentions the fact that, hey, look, here's the deal. We were supposed to play Cincinnati this year at Cincinnati, and I called the coach, and we talked about it, and we said that it's not really fair for us to go to Cincinnati and play in front of no fans, and for then Cincinnati to come back to the KFC Yum Center in a few years and have to play us with 21,000 people in the stands. It's not fair. It's not a true home and home. It's not right. So we've decided to postpone that series. And what Chris Mack basically said was, look, we get Kentucky at home this year. We don't think it's very fair to have to bring them to the KFC Yum Center. I think it's just called the Yum Center now. Just take out the KFC, the Yum Center. Chris Mack said, I don't think it's fair for them to come here, play in front of no fans, and then we got to go to Rupp in a year and play in front of 21,000 fans. If we can find a way to do it on a neutral court, maybe that's possible. I don't think it's fair. And so let me just say this. Before I go any further, I'm always going to do the preface because it's important. I think Chris Mack's a great coach. I think he's the best thing that's happened to Louisville. I think he has made that program. They're going to win a national championship at some point. I'm just telling you right now, he's too good of a coach, too good of a recruiter, and I think he's navigated this whole transition from Rick Pitino about as well as any person could have. Just a likable guy, a charming guy, a personable guy, and I think he's great for that athletic program. And frankly, I can't really think of one thing that he's done since he's gotten to Louisville that I'm not like, man, that guy's the man. I love Chris Mack, including coming on this podcast, by the way. Shout out to Chris Mack. But I got to say, I disagree with this one 100%. And I actually thought it was kind of a bad look for him to say. I don't want to say it was a bad look. He's entitled to his opinion. I'll just say that I vehemently disagree. And here's why. First of all, let's not compare a home and home with Cincinnati to the greatest rivalry in college basketball, right? Like if Louisville goes to Cincinnati, that's a great game for the University of Cincinnati. If they can't play in front of fans, it really sucks for the University of Cincinnati, and there's a chance that Louisville never comes back to the University of Cincinnati, okay? That is completely different than a rivalry that is played every single year, and from my understanding is going to be kept being played every single year. And so when I think back on this situation, I don't think you can compare it to Cincinnati. I think what you have to say is, look, yeah, we might not get them this year with fans at the Yum Center, but we'll get them next year at Rupp, and then guess what? Winter of 2022, they're back at the KFC Yum Center. And oh, by the way, if we don't have fans in 2022, then I don't even know what to say. So, first of all, I get it. I understand the point. But I just think these are such unprecedented times, and I think you just have to roll with the punches, right? I look back, and I've brought up this point many times on this show, but I go back to a few weeks ago when somebody asked Jim Harbaugh, dude, what do you think about the season? And Jim Harbaugh's like, dude, we'll be ready to play in 2 weeks. We're ready to go. Just tell us when and where and who we're playing. We're ready to go. Remember earlier in the summer when there was talk that the SEC might not happen? And Coach O, what did Coach O say? We'll play in a pasture at midnight. We'll play in a cow pasture at midnight if you want us to. Just tell us when and where we're there. And so I think this is an unprecedented time. And this is why I've given the football coaches so much credit. They're not making excuses. They're not worried about, is it fair? Is it not fair? This stadium has fans and ours doesn't. They just want to play. Think about it from this perspective. Ryan Day, Ohio State, they get Michigan at home. You think Ryan Day doesn't want fans at Ohio Stadium? Of course he does. But he understands this is an unprecedented time, and that's just the deal. James Franklin hosts Ohio State in week 2 at Penn State. You don't think Penn State wants fans in the stands? Come on now. Of course Penn State wants fans in the stands. Alabama hosts Auburn, Iron Bowl. Alabama hosts Georgia. You don't think Alabama wants more than 20 or 25% capacity when Georgia comes to town? that game could either vault them or cost them a national championship. But you got to roll with the punches. Notre Dame, they're hosting Clemson. Would have been the biggest game on campus in forever, and they've had a lot of big games at Notre Dame. Had Georgia a few years ago, have USC every other year, have Stanford. Brian Kelly's not complaining that there's going to be limited fans. That's just how we have to roll. And so when I look at Chris Mack, I respect the guy. I respect his opinion, but I do have to just disagree on this one. I just don't see, I don't have any sympathy for that argument. And I'll say this. I think it would really hurt college basketball if that game couldn't be played because they couldn't figure it out. Now, I will say, if they do play 1 year on a neutral, then go to the Yum Center next year and Rupp in 2022, I have no problem with that. If they want to play for 1 year on a neutral court, that's fine, so that Louisville doesn't lose its home game with a home gate of 20,000 people at the Yum Center. I get that, but I don't know. I mean, should we really be having teams travel all over the state to find a place to play a game when one team can stay home and one team can travel in from across the state? Like, to me, I think you just got to roll with the punches. And I think not having this game, look, in 2020, I don't want to say it would be devastating for college basketball, right? Because the fact is everything is devastating for everybody. Ohio State not having fans in the stands is devastating. They just announced on Wednesday that they're cutting a bunch of jobs at Ohio State. So everything is devastating. So I don't want to say it would be devastating if we didn't have Louisville-Kentucky. But look, that's one of the biggest rivalries in college basketball. That's a date that everybody circles their calendars for. That is a game that everybody watches. That is a game that means something to a national audience. And I think it would be really bad for the rivalry, for the state of Kentucky, and for college basketball if that game was not played. So I respect Chris Mack. I do disagree with that decision, and I hope Kentucky and Louisville find out a way to play.